Welcome to Vibe Check, le balado de communication scientifique where we keep the good vibes rolling. Je suis Sasha, your host, doctorante en neurosciences, fascinée par le cerveau, la créativité et tout ce qui se passe dans les zones grises entre les deux. So giddy up, in each episode we zoom in on familiar topics and put them through a scientific vibe check. Let's crack it open. Do we get it? Welcome back to Vibe Check. Quick question. What do you think happens when you fall asleep? Quelques-uns d'entre vous diraient rien, ou même que c'est une pause de la vie qu'on remet sur play when we wake up. This idea that sleep is a complete blackout from our world goes way back. So strap in, because I'm going to take you on an adventure mapping out the evolution of the concept of sleep. On va commencer dans la Grèce antique, où le sommeil était personnifié comme le jumeau de la mort. Puis on sautera à l'ère moderne. Sleep is now considered to be a dynamic process far more complex than a nightly visit to the underworld. But before we start tracing the scientific evolution de notre dodo pour voir comment ça peut nous aider à improve our sleep, we have to, of course, vibe check. Mia, can you please do the honors of getting me the deck? Thank you. I'm just going to take this first one. The coral. Support, protection, and sensitivity. I want to check in the booklet what this means. And it's the cover of the booklet, so that means tout est dans tout. I guess it is. Yeah, so coral is a creature of the sea. We have to remember that. So builders of undersea castles and supporters of a rich and diverse ecosystem, the sensitive coral alerts us to disaster, heed warning signs of collapse, and uplift your community. Okay, so this is a warning sign. What am I being warned of? Maybe it's because I'm being warned that I'm tired and I should go to sleep. Bingo, there we go. But what else? Is there great disaster lurking around the corner? I guess we'll find out sooner or later if there's great disaster. But right now it's weird because I feel really okay. I don't feel extremely stressed out. I'm just looking forward for summer and having a good time. So we'll see. But I'll keep this in mind that I have to be a bit wary of what's going on. Genre rester à l'affût. Okay, so now that we vibe checked, let's go way, way back. In ancient Greek mythology, Hypnos, the god of sleep, lived in the underworld, in a cave where his next-door neighbor was his twin brother. What was his twin brother's name? Thanatos, the god of death. And they both lived next to this river, and every night, Hypnos would go up onto the, human world and sprinkle sleep to everyone. Cette image raconte très clairement la façon dont ces civilisations ancestrales comprenaient le sommeil. It wasn't rest, it wasn't healing, c'était une petite visite quotidienne au royaume des morts. You surrendered your consciousness, you went somewhere dark and formless, and if you were lucky, you came back. Now, the Greeks weren't entirely wrong about sleep's importance, but Hippocrates, the father of medicine, disait que le sommeil était crucial pour la santé. Ses étudiants et lui portaient vraiment attention au sommeil de leurs patients, ainsi qu'à leurs rêves, comme des outils de diagnostic. If you slept badly, c'était signe que quelque chose clochait, les rêves c'était des messages, from the body, from the gods, from something beyond the working mind. Then, Aristotle came along and tried to make it a bit more scientific. It wasn't really scientific, but he really did give it a good try. Sa théorie avançait que le sommeil survenait parce que le corps surchauffait durant la journée. And all those warm vapors from digestion would rise up, reach the brain, and cool down and drag you into unconsciousness. The soul would dim, the senses would shut off, and he called it impotentia sensum, l'impuissance des sens. Une formule assez évocatrice. And look, Aristotle was working with what he had. We didn't have modern science like we have today. And the key thing that his theory locked in was the idea that sleep was passive. Comme si le sommeil était quelque chose dans lequel le corps tombait simplement, pas quelque chose qu'il faisait. And this view persisted for a remarkably long time. Through the Renaissance, through the Baroque era, même si les scientifiques commençaient à comprendre le système nerveux at that time. Même après qu'on a trouvé les premières preuves de la chronobiologie qui suggéraient que le sommeil, c'était un processus assez complexe biologique. Et d'un point de vue philosophique, le sommeil a gardé la même réputation, une interruption totale, a necessary evil, a daily brush with death. And here's what gets really interesting. By the time of the Industrial Revolution, an era that is obsessed with productivity and wakefulness, a doctor named Robert McNish published a book on sleep in 1834 and literally defined it as, quote, the intermediate state between wakefulness and death. And that was the official medical definition, un état intermédiaire entre l'éveil et la mort. So we went from ancient Greece to the Industrial Revolution et grosso modo, rien n'a vraiment changé sur notre conception du sommeil. Sleep was still a lesser state, un état passif et adjacent à la mort. And now I need a little sippy sip. It's kind of poetic that for all those centuries, humans were doing this incredible, complex, biologically essential thing every single night. Et on se demandait même pas pourquoi. Donc, la première fissure sérieuse dans cette idée du sommeil passif ne vient même pas des avancées dans le domaine de la biologie. Elle vient de la psychologie. Et elle vient de deux personnes qui s'intéressent davantage à ce que le sommeil produit qu'au sommeil lui-même, Freud and Jung. Now, whatever you think of Freudian theory, it's a bit mumbo-jumbo. I can definitely agree with that. You have to give Freud some credit because in the beginning of, is it the 20th century? 1900, c'est le 20e siècle. Parce que là, on est dans le 21e. Donc, yeah, so at the beginning of the 20th century, Freud published a seminal work called The Interpretation of Dreams, which I, for a very, very long time, used to listen to the audiobook in German to fall asleep. It really, yeah, I used to be like, okay, sleep time. And then Freud it wasn't Freud. But yeah, it really did get me to fall asleep. I was also hoping I would learn German. I didn't get past genau. And that book, The Interpretation of Dreams, changed the conversation entirely. Suddenly, dreams weren't just random noise, not just leftover static of a resting brain, maybe like you seeing the underworld. They were now considered to be a language, a code that the unconscious mind spoke while the conscious mind stepped back. So Freud believed that in sleep, our defenses lowered. Donc les choses que nous refoulons pendant la journée, les peurs, les désirs, les conflits non résolus, trouvent un moyen de remonter à la surface dans nos rêves, déguisés, symboliques, étranges, mais présentes. Et si l'on pouvait apprendre à lire ce langage, we would discover a new way to heal. And then Jung, as in Carl Jung, my boo, no, genuinely. Carl Jung, I actually 100% like took a direct quote from Carl Jung and put it in my cover letter when I was applying for my PhD. And listen, it worked. So thank you, Carl Jung. So he took these ideas. So he was a student of Freud, and basically he took the psychoanalytical theories further and in a bit of a different direction. So where Freud focused on the personal unconscious, your individual repressed stuff, Jung thought dreams also drew from something deeper. Il se penchait plutôt sur l'idée d'un collective unconscious, shared symbols and archetypes that ran across cultures and through times. Des archétypes et symboles qui font surface dans la mythologie, la religion et même dans nos rêves. And here's where I want to pause and expand on something, because I think we have a narrow idea of what a dream actually is. When we say dream, most of us picture a full cinematic experience. The flying, the chase, the vivid, absurd nature that evaporates the moment your alarm goes off. But dreaming actually begins much earlier than that. So sleep, and we'll get into it in a bit more detail, is separated into different sleep stages, and the first one being non-REM 1 or N1, which is the very first stage that is shallow and a very drifty threshold. Like, it's pretty debated when we actually fall asleep, and this stage is kind of this transitory stage. When you're kind of still awake, but you're not fully asleep, it's like an in-between. You know those racing thoughts that spiral when you're trying to fall asleep? So that to-do list, la conversation que tu rejoues en boucle dans ta tête, that anxiety loop that just won't quit, that's not actually you failing to sleep. C'est en fait la forme la plus précoce d'une activité proche du rêve. Le cerveau commence à traiter l'information de façon plus libre et associative, without the control of your conscious mind, sans le contrôle éditorial de l'état d'éveil complet. Le stade N1, c'est là que l'esprit commence à se débobiner tranquillement. Yeah. Isn't that like it's kind of crazy if you think about it. Genre, it's kind of crazy. Parce qu'on pense toujours qu'on est là, puis on essaie de s'endormir, et on essaie, puis on est juste pas capable de comme, we're like fighting our minds. And it's like that conscious, like your conscious mind is what you need to like kind of shut off.
Is it why, like when you're taking a nap, your dreams are so weird and like kind of, you're kind of halfway in your dreams and halfway in reality because you're in N1 probably?
Yeah, probably. I mean, depending on when you take a nap, you don't always like get into a full REM cycle. And there is also, like, I have a lot of anecdotal evidence from my past research that shows that, like, what we're experiencing in our environment will influence our dreams. And it's also something that we see in, like, sleepwalking, because when people sleepwalk, like, they have their eyes open and they're seeing what they're doing. So, like, for example, like, if you are dreaming that your dog is on fire, you're going to like take your dog and put water on the dog because you don't want your dog to be on fire. But yeah, like the fire is obviously the dream part, like the wacky part, but the dog is like fully in your sink getting wet. So
ou par exemple un bruit que tu entends réellement quand t'es endormi mais que ça devient une partie de ton rêve. Genre your alarm going off and for a few seconds it's in your dreams and then you wake up.
Yeah, that's another really good example. And I don't know if this ever happens to anyone, but sometimes I fully have dreams where I wake up and I go through my morning routine and then like I wake up for real and I'm like, oh, I have to do it again. So yeah, no, dreams are I think we have to start looking at dreams as a bit more of a, like it's not a one size fits all. Like we dream and it's just our thoughts and it's just like these images, like, or it could be these like crazy narratives that we make up in our head. And it's still not really well understood why exactly we dream. There's a lot of theories that I think we're going to get into. Yeah, so N1 is the part where we get back. We start to drift into sleep. We start de se débobiner. J'aime beaucoup. And ouais, c'est ça, on commence à se débobiner. It only gets more exciting from there. So the fragmented images on the edge of sleep, that emotional texture that colors a whole night, the feeling of dread or warmth or unease when you wake up but you can't explain, those half-formed insights that arrive at 3 a.m., which I am such a big believer in, like, the incubation theory. Like, when you have, like, sometimes, like, I don't even have conscious dreams, but, like, I wake up and, like, I have a solution to a problem. And this happens a lot, like, especially when I'm trying to, like, analyze data. It's like I wake up and I'm like, oh, I could like look at it from like this perspective. Or I have like a new idea of like when I'm tackling like interpreting results, and I wake up and it's like, oh, this like new idea, this new way of looking at things. And it like, I think it's just because I mostly have problems with my research. So it's where it happens the most. But I definitely believe that like our minds are always working through things. It's not always it's not really clear how they're doing this, but our dreams are such a cool way, and like what the mind does while we're sleeping is such a cool way to like how our subconscious mind tries to make sense of what's happening in our day to day. I think when we're talking about dreams, I think it's important that we understand dreams broadly, not just as the movie that's playing in our heads, but as really our mind's internal dialogue. And it becomes harder to dismiss sleep as passive if we consider that it's really our mind trying to make sense of what has happened to us during the day, what's going to happen to us later. Et même dans le sommeil le plus profond, calme et réparateur, sometimes there's even a hidden trove of so much like neural activity. And Freud and Jung didn't have the neuroscience to prove this. Ils travaillaient à partir de l'observation, de la thérapie, de leurs propres rêves et de ceux de leurs patients. But what they did was like pinpoint something that it was going to fascinate many, many people after them. So they said that the sleeping mind is not switched off. It is doing something, it is saying something, and it's worth listening to. And that idea was pretty radical at the time because let's remember, from ancient Greece all the way into the beginning of the 20th century, we believed that sleep was like a mini death. And it would take us even longer to figure out like the scientific underpinning of dreaming, of sleep, and what's actually going on. So in 1924, a German psychiatrist named Hans Berger discovered what we now know as the electroencephalogram, or the EEG, which I will be using because electroencephalogram, that's why I'll be saying EEG. Anyways, so basically what he did is he stuck some electrodes on someone's scalp and he looked at like what the activity is going, what the brain is saying, what the activity looks like. So if we take just a little parenthèse here, at this time it was pretty well understood that the brain emitted electrical signals. So like that's the way that neurons communicate. It's an electrical signal that goes from one neuron to the next through action potentials that allows for all of the complex behaviors that we're doing. So it made a lot of sense to put like electrodes that captured electricity to measure brain activity. So a really funny thing about Hans Berger that I discovered when I was researching him was that he was a psychiatrist. So he was not an electrical engineer. And all of the electrical engineers were like dumping on him, being like, you have no idea what you're doing. And he was like, he also was so like open around. He's like, yeah, no, I have no idea what I'm doing, but it's cool. So let's see what we're going to get out of this. And so he basically was the first to kind of identify these rhythmic patterns that were pulsing through millions of neurons, and that they were detectable from outside the skull. And he also recorded EEG while people were falling asleep, and this was the first evidence of like different rhythms of like when you're awake versus when you're asleep. So when you're awake, you have a lot, like the EEG signal is a lot faster, and then it slows down as you fall asleep. And so when you're asleep, it's producing these long, slow, synchronized waves. And it's very different from wake. Like you can really see the visually the change of like when someone's awake to when they fall asleep. It's very fascinating if you ever have the opportunity to watch someone sleep. même avec le EEG, ça a un peu comme renforcé l'idée que le sommeil, c'était genre un slowdown from what we usually are when we're awake. Donc, l'activité cérébrale commence à ralentir, un peu comme le moteur d'une voiture à l'arrêt. Les ondes lentes étaient perçues comme le signe d'une faible activité. Dans leur esprit, le sommeil signifiait encore que le cerveau en faisait moins. And then came 1953. So we're post-war.
Yeah. Yay!
Yay! Est-ce qu'on a trouvé la quote de Carl Jung?
Much of the evil in the world is due to the fact that man in general is hopelessly unconscious. What does that mean? The reason for evil in this world is that people are not able to tell their stories. Is it any one of those?
No. I don't think so, but those slap. I'm gonna try to find it parce que genre j'ai ma cover letter. I have it. Oh yeah. So this is the quote I used in my cover letter. Voir que voir que this letter got me my position. So we know nothing of man, far too little. His psyche should be studied because we are the origin of all coming evil. Whoa. Mia, any thoughts on this quote?
Powerful.
Yeah, Carl Jung. I mean, it makes sense to be making all of these, like, if you're living through war.
For sure. But then came 1950.
Yeah, so that's when Azarinsky and Kleitman, they discovered rapid eye movement sleep. And this was, it was a pretty crazy discovery because at this point, we were looking at sleep as really like this passive state, and rapid eye movement sleep is a moment in, it's a moment in like the sleep stages where your entire body is paralyzed. Like you have no motor movement whatsoever, but your eyes are like darting back and forth. And what the scientists found is that whenever they would wake people up during this stage of sleep, they would typically report very vivid dreams. Et ouais, c'est ça, en français, ils ont nommé ça le sommeil paradoxal. Parce que c'était comme un paradoxe que... Ah oui, puis aussi, non seulement que les yeux bougeaient vraiment vite, c'est que l'activité cérébrale ressemblait exactement à l'activité cérébrale à l'éveil. Donc, on est genre fully paralyzed, but our brain looks like it's completely awake. This discovery, so the discovery of rapid eye movement sleep, or as we like to shorten it to REM sleep, ou le sommeil paradoxal, était un moment où on a vraiment changé, genre, toute notre conception du sommeil a genre tourné sur sa tête. Puis, this is when the twins, so Thanatos and Hypnos, split, and they were no longer one. Because here we had proof that the sleeping brain was not a resting brain. It was a dreaming brain, an active brain, a brain that's been doing something incredibly complex, while the body stayed perfectly and deliberately still. Then, after the discovery of REM sleep, there was more research that was done to map out the full architecture of sleep. And what they found was sleep was very simple but very elegant. So, sleep is not un état unique, c'est un cycle d'environ 90 minutes que ton cerveau va parcourir à peu près 4 ou 5 fois pendant une nuit. And if you want to have a really nice restorative nap, you usually want to have like an hour and a half nap to like get through your whole REM cycle. But research has shown that typically if you want to like just nap, like a power nap, 7 minutes is enough for a good restorative nap. Like just to give you like a little pep in your step. Les états du sommeil, tu commences par le sommeil léger, donc le N1 where you have those racing thoughts, à moitié dedans, à moitié dehors, où le moindre bruit peut te réveiller. And then you sink into a deeper sleep, so stage 2, N2, where the brain starts producing these fascinating bursts of activity called sleep spindles, which are short, 13-ish hertz ripples that flicker across non-REM sleep, like a little tiny storm that are kind of synchronizing your brain to like the deeper sleep. And then even deeper, you have K complexes that start to appear, which also are thought to kind of synchronize your brain so that you can enter sleep like a bit more, naturally, a bit like a progression. It's like a progression into sleep. You have these like little apparitions. And there's also been research that shows that sleep spindles are like memories being reactivated. So it's like they're like loops and like thalamocortical loops that will reactivate memories that are important or that you really think that your mind thinks that you really need to remember. And it's kind of reinforcing those memories. Et quand on est dans le sommeil profond, les stades les plus intenses ou les longues ondes delta traversent ton cerveau comme des vagues. And then we go into REM sleep ou le sommeil paradoxal, where we have this like very active sleep, which is sometimes thought to be a portion where we're reliving a lot of our memories in a kind of jumbled way. And this is one of the theories of why we dream. Et là, le cycle continue 4 ou 5 fois pendant toute la nuit. Et ouais, so does that sound like a passive state to you? Or, because it doesn't to me. So now we know that the brain is indeed very active during sleep. But what is it actually doing? So I touched upon a little bit of these things, but I'll go into a bit more detail now. So we can start by the basics. Your brain runs on a chemical balancing act. During the day, wake-promoting chemicals, things like norepinephrine, histamine, serotonin, orexin, they keep you alert and keep your senses sharp. Ces agents favorisant l'éveil te gardent engagé avec le monde qui t'entoure. Think of them as the day shift. They clock in at sunrise and run the operation. À mesure que la pression du sommeil s'accumule au fil de la journée, literally a chemical called adenosine accumulates in your brain the longer you're awake, your night team, so the night shift, commence à reprendre le dessus. Des neurones favorisant le sommeil situés dans une région du cerveau qui est appelée le preoptic area of the hypothalamus starts to release GABA, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that essentially shushes everyone working on the day shift. One by one, those arousal systems go quiet. The histamine drops, the serotonin falls, and the orexin fades. And then your brain flips a switch. And it's actually described by neuroscientists as a bistable sleep-wake switch, like a light switch that's either on or off. So there's not much room for a stable middle state, and this explains why. So cela explique en partie pourquoi les premiers instants de l'endormissement peuvent sembler si étranges. Tu franchis vraiment un seuil et non comme you're sliding down a slope. Now, once you're in non-REM sleep, especially in the deep slow wave sleep, something really crazy starts to happen. So your brain is doing a lot of like a cleanup work. So ton système lymphatique, donc vraiment un réseau d'élimination de déchets dans le cerveau, devient vraiment actif. Il évacue les déchets métaboliques, y compris des protéines associées à la maladie d'Alzheimer's. Ton cerveau se nettoie littéralement. Il sort les poubelles, des choses qu'il ne peut pas faire efficacement quand tu es éveillé et en pleine activité. So this is why sleep is really important for health, because if you don't sleep, if you're like neglecting your sleep, there's actually things that are going to be building up in your brain. So it's really important to give yourself the right amount of sleep you need for your lymphatic system to be properly activated. Pendant la nuit, le cerveau en profite également pour consolider les apprentissages de la journée et de les storer dans ta mémoire. The thing you learned during the day, the skills you practiced, the new people that you met, and the information that you studied get replayed and integrated during non-REM sleep. And the brain needs to kind of pick what's important and what's not important, and this is where the sleep spindles come in. So they're going to be reactivating what's important, and everything that is less important is going to be pruned. So all of those like new connections, those new memories that you made about like, oh, that you went to your school, you went to work. Like you don't need to like remember exactly the path that you took. You already know it. So it's going to be like, oh, that's just like, we can throw that out. But if you like, I don't know, found out some really cool facts about sleep, your brain is going to try to remember them. And that's what the sleep spindles are doing. They're reactivating those really important parts of your day. So all of these memory consolidation things, memory pruning, memory consolidation, this all happens in non-REM. And then when we get into REM sleep, the dreaming stage, we have something even more important and crazy that happens, et c'est le traitement des émotions qu'on a ressenti ou qu'on a ressenti dans le passé. Des fois, like, it takes us a while to, like, get through emotional problems. So when we say that you need to sleep on it, you need to sleep on a problem, it's not a metaphor. It's actually neuroscience. So during REM sleep, this is where the emotional charge of experiences gets reevaluated. Think of it like this. So during REM, the brain replays emotionally significant memories. But in a neurochemical environment, that's stripped of neuroepinephrine, so the stress chemical. So you can revisit the experience without feeling the full spike of distress. You're pre-processing without re-traumatizing. And there's actually a theory that REM sleep is a form of overnight therapy. So there's this pretty decent book. I did not read it, but I've heard very good things about this book called Why We Sleep. And in this book, he describes REM sleep as the place where the brain takes the sting out of difficult memories, comme une façon de revivre une expérience sans la douleur ou le stress qui est associé. And throughout all this, the circadian system is coordinating everything like a conductor, driven by a tiny cluster of neurons above your optic nerve, if we remember it well from our last episode, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, donc notre horloge biologique qui synchronise tous nos cycles biologiques, donc la température, nos hormones, nos systèmes immunitaires. So melatonin rises as light fades, and then that leads us to wake up, along with like cortisol and other things, but melatonin is the most important one. And nothing in all of this is passive. Our body is doing some of the most sophisticated work, alors que tu es couché là, les yeux fermés, seemingly absent. Là, je veux toucher vraiment à la partie la plus importante de cet épisode, puis c'est de vraiment comprendre le shift entre le sommeil qui a été considéré comme une mini-mort, que maintenant on le voit comme vraiment un stade très dynamique de notre existence, and how this reframing can help us, like, help those of us which are maybe struggling with like insomnia. So as a grad student, I know that like people struggle a lot with their sleep, but I know it's not insular to just grad school. It's everybody has a lot of people struggle with their sleep. It's and I think it's also a very frustrating thing when we're trying to fall asleep and we're fighting against ourselves to get our 8 hours, to get however many hours you want to get. And I think reframing sleep as this dynamic process kind of takes away some of that pressure that we're constantly fighting when we have bouts of insomnia. So think about when you're awake at 2 a.m. and you're trying to fight your sleep and you're just lying there and you're probably telling yourself that you need to like capture sleep. You need to kind of get into it. So you have to make it happen. And if you can't, if it doesn't come, then you're losing something. You're losing hours of recovery, hours of life, or time slipping away into the dark. Donc, cette histoire, celle du sommeil comme quelque chose qu'on réussit ou quelque chose à accomplir, fait elle-même partie du problème. Elle active précisément les systèmes d'éveil dont on parle, donc la réponse du stress et l'hypervigilance, and it spikes your norepinephrine. And if we remember how during N1 we're trying to fall into, like it's kind of your conscious mind and your unconscious mind trying to fight for each other, you want to let your unconscious mind win. You want to let your mind go through what it needs to go through. Whatever stressful moments have been happening, you need to just, I know it's easier said than done, but let it go and really go with the flow when you're falling asleep. And let your brain do what it needs to do. And you need to kind of, let go and relinquish control. Yeah, and then think of letting go as like a muscle. Think of like any other behavior, comme n'importe quelle autre chose qu'on fait dans la vie. Le plus qu'on le pratique, the better we become at it. So if you can consciously take the time to like practice having a better relationship with like what's happening while you fall asleep, when you fall asleep, then you could potentially really like kind of crack the code. You can because it's something that your body will automatically do. Like sleep is kind of inevitable, and I think this is a big part of why this idea persisted so much through the Renaissance, through the industrial era, that sleep was just like a mini death, like because death is also inevitable, so is sleep. And if you understand what's going on in your mind, that you understand that sleep is like a big time for waste clearance, for all of the things that like happen throughout your day that like were maybe not the best, and that like going through your 4 to 5 non-REM cycles are what's going to help you work through them, then you're going to potentially have an easier time falling asleep. And it's also very similar to like when people meditate, there's like kind of this like you have this feeling that like, oh, like your mind needs to slow down, like you need to have like a clear mind. But that isn't the case. Like we're all different. We all go through different things. And yeah, we need to just take a moment to understand that just because we're not fully, yeah, like if we, je commence à perdre mes idées.
Are you sleepy?
I am sleepy. Ouais, donc I feel like I'm going around in circles now. Mais grosso modo, tout ce que j'ai à dire là-dessus, c'est que on a quand même tendance à penser que le sommeil, c'est un moment de notre vie où on est censé vraiment être comme knocked out, completely blacked out. Puis le fait que quand on s'endort, on a encore ces moments de comme grosses pensées and that we're still trying to like make sense of things might feel it might feel counterproductive, but in reality, these moments when you're trying to fall asleep and you have these racing thoughts are actually exactly what your body needs to do. And this kind of ties into like our last episode about chronobiology, where you want to kind of listen to your body and listen to what it's telling you. And maybe kind of similar to like the vibe check I pulled, maybe you're like all these racing thoughts are indications of things that maybe you need to like address, you need to change, or maybe just like let go. And yeah, I hope that.
Can I just add?
Yeah, Mia.
Mais ce que je trouve vraiment intéressant aussi de cette idée-là de ne plus considérer le sommeil comme quelque chose de juste passif, mais je pense que c'est encore un peu dans la culture populaire, comme parfois avec comme tout, comme on doit être productif, on doit toujours être on the go, genre notre esprit à l'éveil est tellement sollicité que justement on peut avoir de la difficulté à s'abandonner à cette idée-là de juste le processus naturel et tout ce qui arrive dans le sommeil. Mais je pense que ce qui est intéressant, c'est de réaliser à quel point c'est productif aussi, d'une certaine façon, de dormir, parce que all that waste management, le management de tes émotions aussi que tu fais, memory consolidation, all of that. Genre, c'est tellement productif. So if you're thinking about pulling an all-nighter, this is your sign not to. Go to sleep. C'est là que tout va se consolider. You'll be fine. You need your sleep. Genre, it's not a waste of time. Comme ça, c'est vraiment intéressant de se rappeler ça. Puis, encore une fois, comme pour refaire un lien avec la chronobiologie ou tout ce qu'on a parlé à propos de go with the flow, sometimes really the best thing you could do to be productive is just take a break, relax, and just enjoy yourself a little bit. Take a nap, have a good night's sleep. Yeah, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mia. And I'll just give you guys a little life hack for your little naps. So basically, when you take a nap, I mentioned adenosine. So when you take a nap, your adenosine receptors get opened up. So the adenosine leaves. And then if you drink a coffee right before you take a nap, basically the caffeine is going to block the adenosine receptors so that there's adenosine can't bind to them. So it's going to get you more awake. And basically you're going to get a double effect of the nap. So you'll get a nap, and then the coffee, there's going to be more adenosine receptors to bind to. So you're going to have more caffeine in your system. So yeah, also you can drink tea. You don't have to drink coffee if it makes you anxious. Cool. So yeah. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And I won't see you. But you'll hear me in the next one. Yeah, and I wish you a good night's sleep. And here's a little forehead kiss.